Jazz legend Hoagy Carmichael was famously quoted as saying, "Slow motion gets you there faster." Decades later, Basketball Hall of Famer Earl the Pearl Monroe said, "Just be patient, let the game come to you. Don't rush, be quick, but don't hurry." Our guest Ryan Bingham's uncle was a bull rider, and when as a boy starting out in the rodeo, he told Ryan that there's a certain mindset necessary to keep him safe and to be able to excel, not "I think I can," but rather "I know I can and I will." His uncle helped him learn the difference between being cocky and being confident in any situation. Ryan Bingham was indeed a successful bull rider, going on to be a member of the rodeo team at Tarleton State in Texas, which is where his music career began to much less fanfare at local bars and a golf course. It was a period where you could say that he was in slow motion and learning how to let the game come to him. Even though he had limited guitar skills, only picking up the instrument in his late teens, he wrote one of his most enduring hits then, Southside of Heaven, which you're hearing now from his 2025 album, Ryan Bingham featuring the Texas Gentlemen live at Red Rocks.
I was still rodeoing on the road. I started taking my guitar with me and just kind of writing songs about our weekend adventures. I'd sit in the back seat of the truck and just play the guitar, and we'd make up songs and tell stories and stuff like that. And but I never had real high expectations of performing or doing much with it. It was kind of fun to sit around at parties with my friends and play a song every now and then. But my guitar playing skills were very rudimentary. I could play 2 or 3 chords, like the cowboy chords, so they say. And I had a really hard time kind of learning how to play other songs, like I couldn't listen to songs on the radio and really figure them out, And so I could play my 1 or 2 chords, and I just started making up my own songs, just kind of out of, kind of expressing feelings and emotions,
Ryan Bingham has gone on to learn a lot more about playing guitar, and since this song was released on his debut album in 2007, he's recorded 5 more albums, 2 live albums, a live EP, and a studio EP. He became famous for his work on the soundtrack to the film Crazy Heart, co-writing the theme song with T-Bone Burnett. That won him an Oscar, a Grammy, a Golden Globe, as well as the Americana Music Association's Artist of the Year Award, among others. Crazy Heart was also where he got his start as an actor, playing a small role. Since then, he has starred in the film A Country Called Home, and more recently, he has played the character Walker in the TV series Yellowstone. Bingham's life story includes a childhood that was never settled, as his family moved often. He found himself as the new kid in town many times, a scenario which made him have to toughen up, but which also exposed him to many different cultures and musical styles. Having to adopt a chameleon-like nature in order to endure being the focus of bullies and learning to embrace an eclectic musical mindset is key to understanding his success. There's tragedy as well. Ryan Bingham lost his mother to alcoholism and his father to suicide around the time when he was breaking out as a star, and those scars are evident in his songwriting too. He has the rare ability to convey raw emotion and memorable characters using the lens of his own life story in a way that is utterly sincere, poetic, and musically rich with earworms. Currently working on a new album scheduled for release in 2026, Ryan Bingham is testing out a number of his new songs on the road, which is where he spoke with my friend Jeff Williams and myself when he played Charlotte recently in October. In our conversation, we talked about everything from those early days where he was striving to simply have a better job than manual labor, key figures in his career like Mark Ford and Charlie Sexton, pivotal moments like joining My Morning Jacket, Wilco, and Bob Dylan on stage, to playing with his current band, the Texas Gentlemen, and a whole lot more, including more music along the way. I'm your host, Joe Kendrick, welcoming you to our episode on Ryan Bingham on Southern Songs and Stories.
Where I call my home. Can't you see that I breathe? Nothing but a change in the pace. The morning came by my soul. as it comes from a hard-earned place. And on the side of heaven, won't you take me home? Long gone, so long, for too long. On the side of heaven, take me home. I've been gone so long, it's getting cold on the road. Take us home.
Southern Songs and Stories is a podcast series with over 150 episodes, profiling artists ranging from Americana to blues and bluegrass, and from rock to rap. From history to hits, and from culture to creativity, you'll find a wide array of subjects, substance, and standpoints. And always, the music that binds it together. You can follow Southern Songs and Stories wherever you find podcasts, with more articles, photos, and videos at southernsongsandstories.com. And you can engage with us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram, Substack, and on YouTube at Joe Kendrick NC. Going back to your beginnings, I just love your origin story, and it's so unusual that you wound up where you are now. I don't know if you think of it in those terms, but just...
Yeah, I definitely do.
I mean, you kind of came into the game a little late. You really didn't play guitar until you were maybe 16.
Yeah.
And I wonder if, well, first of all, could you talk about really when the light bulb went off for you that you figured, like, I'm going to do this? Because you were, I think, on the rodeo team in college when you wrote Southside of Heaven, and that was really before anything started. It was one of your biggest hits. So when did this all click?
You know, I got a guitar when I was 16. My mother bought me a guitar, and I didn't really start playing it till I was, I moved down to Laredo with my dad, and I had a guy teach me a little bit mariachi music down there. It was the first song I ever learned to play. It was a song called La Malagueña. And that was the only song I knew how to play for 3 or 4 years. I could play that a little bit, and I was rodeoing, I was riding bulls, and I'd moved up to Stephenville, Texas, where I ended up going to school at Tarleton State there. And there was a music scene there. A lot of kind of these Texas and Oklahoma bands that would come play locally in the bars there. And I always grew up on a lot of the Texas songwriters like Townes Van Zandt and Guy Clark and Joe Ely. My dad and uncles were big music fans and always had those records around. And so I'd been exposed to kind of that music and that songwriting element, for a while. And then seeing kind of a lot of those bands coming in and playing that music, the kind of the Texas country and Americana and a lot of folk stuff in that area was just inspiring. And I loved to go watch those bands. And as I was still rodeoing on the road, I started taking my guitar with me and just kind of writing songs about our weekend adventures. I'd sit in the back seat of the truck and just play the guitar, and we'd make up songs and tell stories and stuff like that. And but I never had real high expectations of performing or doing much with it. It was kind of fun to sit around at parties with my friends and play a song every now and then. But my guitar playing skills were very rudimentary. I could play 2 or 3 chords, the cowboy chords, so they say. And I had a really hard time kind of learning how to play other songs, like I couldn't listen to songs on the radio and really figure them out, And so I could play my 1 or 2 chords, and I just started making up my own songs, just kind of out of kind of expressing feelings and emotions, and stuff that I kind of did just for myself. And I wanted to learn how to play the guitar, and literally went to the guitar shop, and I bought a book of guitar chords to try to learn some more chords on the guitar. And I bought a harmonica rack and a harp, and got home. I just started playing around with a G chord and a G harmonica, and literally wrote Southside of Heaven, just trying to figure out how to play the harmonica with the guitar. And
what was the key chord?
Yeah. I wrote it, and I ended up playing it for a couple of my friends, and I think the first person I played it for my uncle. He was living up in Farmington, New Mexico, and I'd go visit him, and I started playing these songs for him, and he was just immediately kind of my biggest fan. And every time I would go see him, we'd sit out in the garage, and I'd play my songs I was making up for him, and one day he said, "Man," he goes, I only get to hear these songs when you come and visit me. I'd love to try to find a way we could record these so I could listen to them, when you're gone." And he ended up finding a guy and actually in my hometown, Hobbs, New Mexico. I had a little recording studio in his house, and my uncle took me over there, and I recorded my 5 or 6 songs that I had for him, and just basically so he would have those songs to listen to. And from there, my friends were asking me for them as well, and so I'd give them to some friends, and they started passing them out. And before long, we'd kind of have a get-together or a party or something, and all people started showing up wanting to hear the songs and hear me play, and that spilled over into the bars. There was a little bar in Stephenville called the Water Hole. It was a 9-hole golf course that had a little bar with a pool table in there, and we came in off the road one night, just hanging out at the bar. There was probably 3 or 4 of us in there, and my buddy said, "Man, why don't you get your guitar and come in here and play some songs at the bar?" And I came in there and played, and the owner of the bar said, "You should come in here on Wednesday nights, and you can have like a little show." And that kind of started, and I'd put my tip jar out there. I'd make $50 or $100 or whatever I'd make in tips, and it didn't take me long to figure out that the guitar felt a lot better in my hands than the shovel did during the week. I rode bulls on the weekend and stuff, but I was pretty much a weekend warrior. I always had to have a day job, and that was usually construction or digging holes or some type of labor. So it was very at that age, it kind of really set me free of just kind of this ability to go out and earn money playing the guitar, and also I loved the adventure of travel, and so that those two things came together, and it just kind of snowballed. And next thing I knew, I was in a band, and in a van and a trailer, and we're heading towards New York, and then we're heading towards Los Angeles, and been overseas to Europe and Australia and all over the place.
Sit down at Panky's Roadhouse on Highway 69. Shake your dollar down in my cup, my Panky ring will slide. Oh, that's how I jingle and go. I sang for all your friends. Oh, you know, that's how I jingled and go.
A sampling of the live version of Jingle and Go by Ryan Bingham featuring the Texas Gentleman from Live at Red Rocks, a song that speaks directly to that early period of Ryan Bingham's career that he described in our conversation. Coming up, Ryan Bingham tells us about his first big break, which came when he was playing one of those nearly empty bars in his once again home state of Texas. Plus, I'll explain why I think there's a good bit of Hank Williams' spirit in his songwriting, and sample his latest song, Lucky Ones. First, we talk about how all the places Ryan Bingham has called home have factored into his music, with Jeff Williams in the conversation as well. Here is Ryan Bingham.
Out in West Texas, for one, it's just a very desolate area. You know, it's just leaves a lot of room for imagination. You know, wondering what's out there in the world. Lots of daydreaming, that so to speak. But also just the music that was in that area. You know, I think being exposed to some of those bands. You know, like I said, from early on, like just the Townes Van Zandt, Guy Clark, Joey Lee, Terry Allen, the Flatlanders, that kind of music. And then I grew up kind of moving around all over the state of Texas, but ended up in Austin, around the Austin, Texas area. And there was so many bands from all over that played so many different styles of music. And I think Texas in general is just it is such a melting pot of culture, from the blues and the Zydeco and the Cajun music from Louisiana coming across to the North Texas kind of swing bands, honky-tonk stuff, the hip-hop scene there, in the 90s in Houston, the German and folk bands. I mean, there's just all of that was just mixed in. So whether it's country or blues or jazz and folk, Americana, all that's mixed in so I think the mariachi stuff, the corridos from Mexico is something was a huge influence. So that was that was what I heard in my head when I was always playing or writing songs. Those were the things that I was heavily influenced by.
Is there any Paris influence in any of this anymore?
Yeah, interesting a lot. When I went to Paris, when I went to the Wild West show.
I mean, you probably had to learn to speak a little bit of French pretty quick.
A little bit. I struggled. It was in that Wild West show. I lived with all these guys that were Native American, or there are a lot of cowboys from all over the states, from Texas, Montana, even some Canadian guys there. So there was a lot of kind of English speaking in the circle that I was in there. But most of the places that I would go play were up in I'd go play the Irish bars, the pubs in Paris all the time. And so there was a heavy kind of influence from just kind of the Irish music that was around there that I would see as well. So they say like either you kind of go back to the blues, and if you want to go back further, you go back to the Irish music, to the folk songs and ballads. So that was a big influence as well.
Between your second, third records, you ended up kind of in Topanga Canyon, and
Yeah.
I was always curious because your music always still sounds like it's from West Texas,
Mm-hmm.
and you sound like you smoked about 20 cigarettes before you even your voice was gravelly even when you were. But how did that whole thing of Topanga Canyon, where all that 70s stuff came? Did that influence you any? Like, was there still some of that luster there, like when you were in Topanga?
Yeah, there is. It's changed a lot over the last kind of 10 years. But interesting. When I never really planned on staying in California when I went out there. We went out there mostly for the adventure and to go somewhere and play some songs. And I remember driving through that canyon, and it just really kind of reminded me of the hill country a bit. And I was really surprised that it's a big state park there in the middle of one of the biggest cities in the world. And it was just a cool spot. It was very eclectic and all kinds of artists and different things going on up there. So once I did decide to stay, I was like, man, I can hang out up here. I didn't know how long I would last, like in the middle of the city, but being up in Topanga where there's some room to breathe, it was really nice, and definitely the music history and culture up there that runs so deep was really cool.
Key turn in the road early on for you was when Mark Ford spotted you at a nearly empty set in Fort Worth, I believe. I wonder if you've had the opportunity to pay that forward, or if you had any moments where you've spotted talent or been able to recognize, hey, I wonder if any of that has played out at all for you in the years since.
A ton. There's just, when I first kind of started playing around, there just didn't really seem like there was a lot of kind of the country music or Americana artists that were young or like my age. Most of the folk were a little bit older, and there's so many young folks these days that are like playing guitars and out there, writing songs and doing that. I'm just blown away at, how many, just at all the talent out there. There's Coulter Wall, Stephen Wilson Jr. I mean, there's so many just kind of great guys out there doing it. It's really, really cool to see how it's blown up.
Charlie Sexton's pretty important to your musical story. Do you keep up with Charlie?
I do. I really keep up with Charlie a lot. He's really been a great mentor and influence on me. And even I did my last record, the American Love Song, with him. And I remember one of the conversations I had with him before I made that, it was just like I wanted to get better at playing the guitar, and I was like, what can I, can you send me some things I can work on or practice? And he said, just listen to the stuff that you like to listen to, and he goes, don't try to play it note for note. He goes, just listen to it a lot and you'll start playing like that, and he's been just really, really great influence and a great guy.
Kind of speaking of Charlie, because I know he played with them as well. Last time I saw you was 2013, I guess, with Dylan in Virginia Beach. And it was you, and it was a hell of a set. It was you, My Morning Jacket, Wilco, and then Big Bobby D, at the end, How was that, like, did you have much interaction with Dylan? And, how was that? Like, because to me, that was my one and only Dylan check, and I'm glad I got one. And I was glad I got to see you it got better and better.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, how was that? Like, and maybe even some more of your heroes that you've played with, like how are those? What are some ones you could kind of mention?
Oh man, that whole tour was just a real dream for me. Wilco was a really huge influence on me, as well as My Morning Jacket. All of those guys were great, and obviously Bob Dylan as well. It was a big learning experience for me. I'd never really played shows on that kind of level, with that kind of production and that, and besides just the quality of like the musicianship out there and the professionalism of all those folks, from the bands to the crews to everything that's, that setup, we got to do it every night, for weeks. And so just learning how to tour, as a band and a crew, and learning how to set up your gear properly, and just ways of going all the ins and outs from top to bottom were just a big learning and a big growing up experience for me. I remember My Morning Jacket, they started to invite me to get up and sing a few songs with them. I think we were doing Don't Do It by the band. And I just remember getting up there with them and just the sheer power of that band, and the sound on the stage was just like, it's hard to explain, that kind of energy that was on the stage when we fired up. And it really kind of brought out a lot in me. They kind of pushed, I think, Jim James, he gave me the confidence to get up there and sing with them at that level. I just never really considered myself to kind of be on that level, to be able to perform, with those guys at that level. And him getting me up on stage, it was just kind of like, oh wow, like I can do that. And then seeing kind of the response from the crowd, and it gave me the confidence to step up and grow up in a big way. And then from there, Dylan started getting Jeff Tweedy and Jim and myself to do the weight with him at the end of their set. And it was kind of like that classic Dylan stuff where like we'd rehearse it in a certain key, to do the harmonies. And right before we'd get up there, Charlie would run back and say, "Hey, no, we're doing it in a different key now." You know?
At least it wasn't mid-song or without warning, because Dylan's known for that sort of
thing. It
thing.
would be if Charlie didn't give us the heads up. And and me and Jim and Jeff, we would sit backstage with a guitar and we'd kind of go through the harmonies of the key. And really, they were teaching me how to sing it right, And then he would change it. And then I remember the very last show, I think it was in Los Angeles, and he did the same. He changed the key on us right before the song, and me and Jeff and Jim were like, "No, let's just keep it in the same one." So we did. We just kept the original key that it was in, and Dylan was changing it. He looked up, and he just he had the biggest grin and smile on his face. And after that night, he walked up and said hello to all of us and shook our hands, and he gave me his harmonica that he played with that night, and that was a pretty special moment.
That's
for
big.
me.
That's big stuff.
Yeah.
Thinking about My Morning Jacket makes me wonder if you could compare reverb for Ryan Bingham and your band. Can you even scale it to get to where My Morning Jacket is with reverb?
Man, I don't even want to try. Yeah, but anything that I've experimented with musically, and sounds and all of that, those guys probably don't know. That was a huge influence and a huge inspiration for me. Getting to tour and play with those guys and Wilco too. I mean, just the level of their musicianship and the sounds that they're creating was just like, I remember at sound check going out there and just looking at their pedal boards and things, going like, what do you, how do you even start with that? Yeah, even back to Mark Ford, when I met him, same deal. I'd only played an acoustic guitar, knew a handful of chords, but I'd never had an electric guitar or an amp or anything like that. And he's the first guy to he bought me an old Craftsman guitar. I think he got it on eBay for like $100, and it was like the old Sears catalog electric guitar, and it was hollow, and he put acoustic strings on it, and he gave me a slide, and he's like, just in a little kind of, it was a boutique amp that had a little 10-inch speaker in it. It had two knobs on it, a volume knob and a tone knob. And he goes, "You're not going to get in trouble with this. He's all you got to do is turn both of those knobs as loud as they can go."
I got high, I got the words to my own song. And I got lost, couldn't find my way back home. Halfway from a heart attack, I turned back. And I saw a ghost of my friend I know that passed. Two hands on a wheel, my eyes on a road. How far, how long can we go? A back road to a heavy load, a highway from home, leading us on further away. They call us the lucky ones. They call us the lucky ones.
That's a bit of Ryan Bingham and the Texas Gentleman's song, The Lucky Ones, the first release from his forthcoming 7th studio album. The song's theme of the burdens of a life filled with a longing to return to a country home that, judging from the title and lyrics, everyone felt fortunate to escape from, bring to mind an artist that dealt in the poetry of lived reality and utter sincerity, who had a similar effect on his audience, King Hiram Williams, better known as Hank Williams Sr. Like Ryan, Hank learned self-sufficiency at a very early age, having an absent father and subsequently having to shine shoes, sell newspapers, and peanuts to help make ends meet. Likewise, he also soaked up a wide range of music, which he fused into his unique style and employed in his songwriting, which possessed an emotional gravity that remains impossible to resist. Like Hank Williams, Ryan Bingham has made many a grown man cry. Listen to songs like Tell My Mother I Miss Her So, or The Other Side, and I think you'll understand. At times I wonder what the ratio of heartbreak and turmoil at an early age is to great artists. I think you could easily write a book, if someone's not done it already, about iconic music artists and how their absent or domineering or abusive fathers or mothers loomed large, in whatever ironic fashion, in the background of those artists' greatness. In the background of Ryan Bingham on stage and in the studio are the Texas Gentlemen, his band since 2024. They do get plenty of accolades from Bingham on stage and off, however, and have their own impressive musical pedigrees to bring to the table. Guitarist Nick Lee and keyboardist Daniel Creamer are principal songwriters in the Texas Gentlemen's own records, which range from a swampy, Muscle Shoals-inspired rock to sophisticated R&B and heady funk. Guitarist Ryan Ake, bassist Scott Edgarly Jr., and drummer Aaron Haynes also contribute songs, and on stage with Ryan Bingham are joined by veteran fiddle player Richard Bowden. Guitarist Cody Huggins was an additional member of the band when we saw their show in Charlotte. The Texas Gentlemen are Ryan Bingham's right arm, and have also backed the late Chris Christopherson at his legendary return to Newport Folk Festival in 2016, and have played with artists like Brian Setzer and Paul Cawthon as well. Jeff Williams asked Ryan Bingham specifically about the Texas Gentlemen and whether they were simply playing his songs or whether he felt like he was part of a band.
With these guys in the Texas Gentlemen, I definitely feel like I'm part of a band.
Cool.
Yeah, and they've really kind of encouraged me or inspired me to really get out here and play a lot more. You know,
They're a badass band.
They're great, you know, and they're their own band in their own right. You know, they tour on their own and play shows. And there was a time where I, was just trying to kind of find hired guns on the road to go play shows, like one-off things. And I remember I had a pretty big show somewhere. This was a couple of years ago. Might have been like Billy Bob's in Fort Worth in Texas.
That's a big show.
Yeah. And I didn't have a band, and I was like, crap. I need to find some guys to come play for this show. And might have been Charlie Sexton or something. He said, you ought to give these guys a call. They're great. They backed up George Strait one night. They kind of backed up a couple of other folks. And I remember calling them, and they all said they'd be down to play. And they're like, yeah, just send us the set list. We'll learn all the songs. I'm like, yeah, like,
It's a good
no, rehearse or nothing. He's like, no, I think we'll be all right. We didn't rehearse, never met any of them. We just showed up in front of like 6,000 people and pulled it off, And after that night, I was like, wow, that was just a lot of fun. It was not stressful. They all knew the songs. Like, we could just kind of riff and figure it out as we went, and we did that for 2 years. I would fly out, we'd play one-off shows, and we'd maybe rehearse once or twice. I'd send them the songs, and they'd know them when I showed up, and it was just how cool is that?
That's really cool.
And now that we've had a chance, to get in the studio and record and play and rehearse and stuff, like, they've taught me a lot, and we all kind of come from that Texas area, so we have the same influences, and a lot of I think my rhythm style still kind of comes from that mariachi music I learned early on, and the Texas shuffles and the train beats and all of that stuff. And I've played with a lot of drummers from a lot of different parts of the world, and to kind of play with a drummer kind of from Texas that grew up with those different beats, like, you can tell, and so it's really kind of brought some of me, even my older songs, to life in a certain way that I never envisioned, so it's been definitely a feeling of being part of a band, and been really cool.
Ending our episode with the song that concludes Ryan Bingham and the Texas Gentlemen's set at Red Rocks, which goes all the way back to his debut album Mescalito, a rousing version of Bread and Water. When he plays this live, the party is well underway and the audience is in full tilt boogie. It would be easy to look at Ryan Bingham from a 30,000-foot view and think that the chorus of celebratory cowboys and cowgirls in the crowd are the lens to use in focusing on a takeaway for his music. But as I pointed to earlier, there is poetry at the foundation of the party, And even more than that, there's a progressive social and political outlook that gets glossed over amidst the boots and hats and beer and bourbon. Take a deeper dive into the history of Ryan Bingham and listen to more of his interviews, and you will find a much more profound, more present, and aware person than you might expect. Thanks to my friend Jeff Williams for inspiring me to pursue interviewing Ryan Bingham and for joining us in our conversation. Thanks also to the team at Saxon Company in Nashville for helping coordinate with Ryan Bingham's team to pave the way for this episode. We thank you for being here as well. Even though we are at the close of this episode, there are over 150 more episodes of Southern Songs and Stories awaiting you anytime for free, anywhere you find podcasts. You can follow us on social media at South Stories on Instagram, at Southern Songs and Stories on Facebook, and you can view these episodes and a lot more on my YouTube channel at the handle Joe Kendrick NC. We also have a page on Substack where you can read the scripts of these podcasts and get updates on what we are doing and planning in our quest to explore and celebrate the unfolding history and culture of music rooted in the American South and going beyond to the styles and artists that it inspired and informed. Thanks to Jacqueline Anthony for producing the radio adaptations of this series on Public Radio WNCW, where we worked with Joshua Ming, who wrote and performed our theme song. Please take a moment and give us a top rating and where you can, a review. It makes a big impact on the ranking and therefore the visibility of this series to all the other music fans who also follow podcasts. I'm your host and producer, Joe Kendrick, and this is Southern Songs and Stories, the music of the South and the artists who make it.
Told the truck driver, put the pedal to the metal, 'cause Houston got me down. I found the Colorado, red rocks in the heaven. Have a good time with the honey now, then a hell's to no get down. I'll clap your hands.